Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. Here we go again. You know, you just put DBDR's name in the title, and I know it's going to be a video that gets a lot of views. And, what's interesting is I had, before making this video, went back and looked at some of the other videos I did about DBDR, and they by the standards of my channel, they all got really good views, but the response was overwhelmingly positive. Like, you in the comments, of course, you have his retarded fans, saying negative stuff with just the complete lack of substance, right? And just such little originality, which only, just further proved the point I was trying to make. But if you look at the likes to dislikes ratio, it was really good. In fact, even the one that I really kind of regret making, because I think that I wasn't necessarily very clear in it, was the video "I Can't Stand DBDR," and it's like the response to that was so positive. So, it's definitely not just me, right? So DBDR, made a video where, I don't know, it's like all of his shit. It's not really about anything. It's, it's like he's got a couple things that he touches on, but it's the same stream of consciousness. Like, really, if you've seen one DBDR video, you've seen them all. And but like in this one particularly, what he's talking, he touches on several things, but what he touches on heavily is SSRIs and psychiatry. At least in the first part of the vid, which is the only part I watched. Which is, an interesting topic, and and obviously a very important topic. Something I've talked a lot about. The first thing, though, he says, or one of the first things he says at the beginning is he says something that's the only time I've ever really, he said something that's really actually made me concerned. And that was what he was saying about his blood work. He was basically saying that he's got no vitamin D and no calcium. And he said apparently it's happened before, and even when he's eating a healthy diet, it has happened. So, that never even occurred to me. That would be something, because I would obviously, if your vitamin your vitamin D, your calcium, your B12, the B12 especially is really, that's actually dangerous. So he's got low B12. And basically what he was saying, he was giving all the symptoms that vegans have, long-term vegans have. And he's, then he goes kind of saying, that, or implying that could have something to do with, his mental health. Yeah, it could, and I really can't give any advice on this one because I've never heard of that. Again, the stuff he's talking about is stuff that vegans get. And I didn't know you could have that, low B12 or low vitamin D without being a vegan. So I don't know, how, since I don't know how a non-vegan would even get those things, I don't know, what he would do to reverse it. I kind of doubt, based on my own experience, that that's the cause of his mental problems. I think it probably, some of the symptoms he's mentioning, yeah, they probably exacerbate it, those bad blood work things, but I don't know if they cause it. Maybe everybody's so different. So, I mean, I agree that I don't know, what do they even do the blood work for if they don't know how to fix it if they find it? It seems like it's one of those things that it's like, oh yeah, you've got really low B12. It's like you say you need to start eating meat. I already do eat meat. I'm not a vegan. Oh well, good luck, I guess. I don't know like what the protocol is there. So yeah, I don't know. And he was saying that he thinks it's because he had a really shitty diet growing up. I doubt it. It's such a DBDR thing to say. Basically he's like, yeah, because he was eating Burger King every night as a kid, that it screwed up his B12 things as an adult, which makes no sense whatsoever. It just it wouldn't even give you low B12 at the time, let alone there. But DBDR being DBDR. But now we can. Then he eventually he talks about me, and so I think it's important to reiterate that how I feel about him, what I think about him, because my feelings about him have really not changed since the early days. I think DBDR is a good guy. I think he is a stand-up guy. I think he is a guy who I genuinely admire. I think he has a lot of genuinely admirable traits. I think he has a really good strength of character. I think I think he is a strong person underneath. He may not have a strong personality, but I think he is a strong person. And in a lot of ways, I wish I was more like him. So, and then I also think that, and I think I talked about this in one of my DBDR videos, that in my experience, people don't change. People are incapable of change. They grow and they mature, but they don't actually change. And I think that's kind of what happened with DBDR. He's matured, but he hasn't changed, and I don't think he ever will. So, but like, I'm not sure. Did I already say that he is? I do think he's a fluid storyteller, which is a real talent. So he does have some talents. But one thing that I've always really admired about him is, like, even though he's Black Pill Orthodox, he's never been Eldar. He's always really made an effort to, make things better. To make things better. He's really tried to help himself, which counts for a lot, especially in this space. Because he's done it without really much support. Including from his own viewers. And like I said, it takes a lot of strength of character, and I admire, like, I myself am not a hardworking or disciplined guy, so I really admire people who are hardworking and disciplined, and people who try to do like real self-improvement and not the bullshit self-improvement to like improve their station and stuff, improve their so I really admire him, like, and that's it. But I also think, and I said this earlier, like, so I like him in the sense that I think he's a good person and that I'm genuinely rooting for him. What I don't like is his personality, which I think is objectively awful. Like, I think he is an extremely unpleasant individual. And, usually you use that for people who are just kind of mean and nasty, which he's not. He's unpleasant in that, I mean, his personality sucks. His personality is terrible. There's no other way to say it. He's just a really unpleasant, negative individual. It's like he radiates, he just kind of radiates a negative energy, and that's over the internet. I can't imagine how much worse, it would be in person. And, even in a lot of his own stories, like he'll just say stuff and it'll be like, the other people in it, and I don't even know how much I believe his stories, but the other people in it, it's like, yeah, of course that they were annoyed with you because you're really annoying. You're just a really annoying, unlikable guy, and, being around you is unpleasant. It's like the typical, typically, and I don't know how autistic he is, but like autistic people really don't get why everybody hates them so much. It's because you're fucking annoying. And I mean, yeah, you don't see that because you're retarded. And that's how it goes. So no, I mean, I definitely, feel that same way. He's not somebody who, like, I like him in the sense that I think he's a good guy, but his personality is bad. Which I've talked about this before. I don't really view your personality as you. It would be like saying somebody's like really ugly, but they're a good person underneath. You can also say the same thing about, personality. Like their personality is terrible, but they're a good person underneath. So, the thing is, but having, like, I'm not sure, I've never met or come across a black pill Orthodox person who I've liked, who or had a good personality or even a mediocre personality. And for a long time, I thought it's because black pill orthodoxy is so retarded, but that it made them unlikable. And I mean, there's something to that. I think it's part of it. But really, I think it's more the kind of personality. I think that black pill orthodoxy attracts a certain type of personality. Your DBDRs, your face LMSs. And these are guys who, they could be the most blue-pilled people in the world, but they'd still be really annoying. Because they suck. And so, but then he goes, but the thing is, right, he goes on to completely misrepresent me, which is what he always does. This is the thing, because I've talked to him before, I've gone back and forth, I've watched his stuff. This is what he always does. He goes back, he says something that's just not true, like a complete misrepresentation, or he'll just say something just out of this world retarded. And then you call him on it, and he says like, oh, no, I didn't say that. Or that's not what I meant. It is like, no, yes, you did say that. Yes, that is what you meant. So he says that, he starts off right from the beginning saying that, because he says that he watches my stuff, and that it's interesting. Well, good, I'm flattered. But obviously you've never learned anything from it, because you don't have the ability to comprehend basic statements. Here's the thing: if DBDR was just like, had just watched it and was just blatantly lying about what I said, that wouldn't bother me. I would just be like, okay, I mean, I wouldn't know why he was doing it, but all right. But he's not lying. He genuinely believes it. I mean, when he's called on it, if he responds to this, he's going to say like, oh, no, that isn't what I said. I know, because he does this every time. But but he just can't like comprehend. Like his comprehension of statements, like even like the clearest statements, it just doesn't process for him. Like you could say, he's somebody who you could say to him like, the sky is blue, and he would be like, then this guy was saying that like the sky was green or something. Like, that's just the way his mind works, you know? It's like, and to me, that's like a million times worse. Like, if you was just lying, it would be like, okay, you know, I can understand that. But like this like complete inability to understand the most like clearly articulated statements is I don't know what it's all about. But I mean, now like when you make YouTube videos, you are going to have people like misunderstand this stuff, but not like, but he's the only person I've ever interacted with. I'm sure there's other like him who just show like a repeated inability to understand like ultra clear statements. Like, cause like sometimes I really do misstate stuff or I do that and I'm be like, oh, I could have been clearer there. Like, and actually there's two videos that I haven't taken them down, but I have regrets that I wasn't clear enough about what I meant in them. One is the I can't stand DBDR video, where I think there were parts of it that I could have been clearer about what I was talking about. And even now, going back now, because I was after this video, I was thinking like, was I too hard on myself about that video? Like, because I mean, obviously the guy is a retard who can't understand anything. But I went back and looked at the part that, like one of the parts that he responded to, and I was like, nah, I wasn't. I just wasn't. I mean, I think most people could have got what I was saying, but I just wasn't clear enough. And then the other is the Scott Adams attacks black people video. And that one, I was, again, like, I stand by everything I said in it, but I wasn't as clear as I should have been. And the Scott Adams video actually did a follow-up, you know, trying to explain myself. But the, so anyway, let's get to the, like, what you guys want to hear about and what he said. So he starts off saying that, like, cause he's really anti-SSRIs. And he says, he's talking about me, and he says, and this guy says, you know, like, oh, DBDR is so XYZ and needs to be on SSRIs. He needs to be on. Nope, never happened. You guys can go back and watch the video. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. So I said in one of the videos I made about him once, okay, this was one video, and I've made several. I mean, I think like 5 or even 6, maybe 7. I said that, like, I talked about, like, that his depression, yeah, probably mostly came from his life circumstances, that he was sad, mostly because of his life circumstances. But I also said that he was describing symptoms that sounded like they went beyond what you get from dissatisfaction with life, and particularly his inability to find pleasure in any of his copes. And I said, this is serious enough that he may need to consider getting on an SSRI, you know, because, and now in his defense, and the thing is, that is, and I'd never specifically mentioned him, but I'm pretty sure in later videos, I have expressed extreme skepticism about SSRIs. And like, if I just had to advise him, like, should he be on an SSRI or not, I would say no. And the reason is for a lot of the things he mentioned in this very video, well, first he says, like, the basic things that they don't work or they make you a zombie, which are the standard SSRI criticisms. We'll get to that in a second. But basically, and he was talking about me, is like that they fuck your brain up and they're damaging or impossible to get off of. Yeah. Yeah, right. And because of that, I would, like, probably the biggest regret of my life is going on SSRIs. And you know, because I don't see any way for me to ever get off. I think they caused so many more problems than they solved. And people say this, people who try to get off SSRIs, like depression's bad. It can be really bad. I mean, it can be bad enough to make people completely non-functional or drive them to suicide. I'm talking about clinical depression here. Not disputing that, but this is very common, because I read a lot about this when I was withdrawing from Effexor, Cymbalta, Zoloft, whatever. That people, they stop taking the meds, right? Or even they taper off. And they get, then like the depression comes back, but it doesn't really come back because what they'll say is, this isn't my depression. They know whatever their symptoms were before the meds, but these withdrawal symptoms or discontinuation symptoms are so much worse and so much different. It's so much worse than the original stuff. And and it's absolutely hell. And for that reason, well, amongst others, but that reason, I would be very cautious about telling somebody to go on SSRIs. Like, to me, an SSRI should be truly a last resort. Like, you've tried everything, nothing's working, and you're basically suicidal. So at this point, you've got nothing to lose. What DBDR said in this video about them being overprescribed is true. They just throw it at everything. But what's bad is not so much that they throw it at everything is bad, but the worst part is that they use it as the frontline treatment because the psychiatric community just doesn't appreciate how dangerous these drugs are. That they can permanently fuck your brain up, and they can make it worse. They can make you a zombie, like people say, and they can make it so you're on them permanently. The thing, though, that I do think needs to be recognized is, like, a lot of people will say, and DBDR's not the first person to say this, and by far, they've been saying this forever, is that, oh, they don't really work. They don't work, and they make you a zombie. Well, I'm not a zombie, and they can have negative side effects, and the negative side effects are very common. I don't know if they're necessarily the majority. For me, I don't really have. It depends. I don't know how much of my sleep schedules come from the meds. I can tell you that when I'm off the meds, it doesn't improve my sleep at all. But that could be, just sleep weird. I really don't know. I feel like they don't really have. I've been pretty good in that I don't get any of the negative side effects. Maybe I do. I don't know. But it's completely false to say that they don't work. When I got on them, my first antidepressant was Wellbutrin, which isn't even an SSRI. But I got on them, I was diagnosed with depression. I didn't buy that. I thought I had just anxiety because I really didn't feel depressed. But now I see that anxiety and depression are the same thing. But the problem is, looking back in hindsight, as bad as my symptoms were, because what I got them for was because I couldn't sleep. I could not sleep. And my mood was, okay, look, it could have been better. But really, I was definitely not depressed. And I definitely see that now. And, it's the thing is, when I was a kid, in middle school and stuff, what they really overdiagnosed was Ritalin, which they probably still do. But now they're probably doing it. Now they're definitely doing it with SSRIs. But so I remember getting on it. I didn't notice any improvement in my mood because my mood was fine to begin with. I didn't notice any improvement in my motivation or concentration either, and that wasn't fine to begin with. But it did get me to be able to sleep. And I was on it for a long time, and I felt fine, and I got off of it, and I actually felt better when I got off of it. But then I relapsed hard after my suicide attempt. And ever since then, I've never been able, to get off. I've tried many times. But, I think that those years from, 18, I don't think it was the Wellbutrin, but I think being on the Zoloft from 17 through 23 or 24, 23, just did like permanently fucked up my brain chemistry. And so I needed, I take antidepressants, but I'm not sure that they really help anything besides keeping away the withdrawal symptoms or discontinuation symptoms, whatever you want to say. So he also mentioned like other things that I've tried that have never really worked for me. Yeah, the thing is, just going back, like what happened with me, right, is that my mood is fine. It's like I don't feel depressed or anything like that. But I mentioned before I had problems, with sleeping, and like now I still can't hold a good sleep schedule, and I have like really serious problems with fatigue. So because of that, I was trying other things to do it. One of the things I tried was a thing called TMS, or transcranial magnetic stimulation. And that, I think, because the way I did it was really stupid. I did it with 2 sessions a day instead of 1 session a day, and with no real taper. So the withdrawal from that really fucked me up. And, I was thinking about it, like probably for like about a year now, I've probably been completely recovered. But that's like, I had to go back and do another TMS thing, another, like a longer term TMS thing. And, then there were ketamine infusions and stuff. And it took like at least 2 years, probably more than that, before I was fully recovered. And when I say fully recovered, I mean recovered from the point I was when I did the TMS in the fucking first place. So, yeah, and then DBDR again, because his comprehension skills are just shit, said that I said that ketamine withdrawal like fucked me up. There's no such thing as ketamine withdrawal. Ketamine stopped working, but there was never a point where I was in withdrawal. I actually think ketamine infusions could be, I'm not going to recommend it for him because I think because it's pricey. But I think ketamine infusions would really help DBDR, at least at first. And I would actually go as far as to say that I think ketamine should be the frontline treatment for depression. Then DBDR says stuff like, so he says, he goes into like this thing about like how diet is a problem. Well, I've talked about this before. Diet for me, when I eat a healthy diet, it does improve both my mood, my fatigue, my sleep, my digestion, all those things that are depression related, my energy levels. It absolutely does not cure them. I think, I don't know. We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's go back to like what he said about me though. So he says then that I'm depressed because I live alone, I have no girlfriend, and I've got no purpose. I guess he's been watching Casey Zander. No, I'm not. I know what he's talking about in this one. I think he's a retard, but what he said about purpose is true, and we'll get to that. I have no purpose, and I can only work part-time, and he didn't say it, but I bet you he probably thinks, and like, because my diet is shit, that, that's why he's like, and that's why he's depressed. Not all these, like, and then so basically what he goes on to say is, or what he's saying is that, yeah, like, you don't need all this shit, like SSRIs or ketamine treatments or TMS or all these treatments you don't need, because the problem isn't your brain chemistry. You're depressed because life sucks. And because DBDR is such an arrogant retard, like most of his generation, he really thinks he's the first person who ever thought of that. Like that's not new. Like, you know what I mean? Like everybody fucking knows that. Anybody who's like in the psychiatry space knows about this. Now look, therapists really do think like, oh, okay, you're not feeling well? Well, here, take this pill. Because I mean, they're retarded in a dangerous way. My own shrink is like that. You know, and they really think they can just throw like a pill at every kind of problem instead of looking at the underlying thing. And I'd be all for that if the pills actually work for what they do. But the thing is, you know, again, he doesn't get this because he's retarded and his viewers are mostly retards. But there is a difference, okay, between sadness and depression. They are not the same thing. Now, ironically, psychiatrists don't seem to understand this either. Yes, if you've got bad situations in life, you know, and this is not the first person to think about this, DBDR. Neither are your viewers. And I know the response. I didn't think I was the first person. Yeah, you did. Yes, you did. You and your viewers think that like you're the first people to ever think about this. Yes, if you, with bad circumstances in life, you're going to be unhappy, okay? But you can also be unhappy in a different way with fucked up brain chemistry. I will stand by that. From what I've heard of DBDR, he has crossed the line from being unhappy about difficult life circumstances into the brain chemistry area. You know, I don't think you should deal with it by SSRIs, but it's that he's depressed because of like brain chemistry things. Like I think that, you know, if DBDR, you know, like woke up tomorrow as a Chad and, you know, like had all like the experiences that he wants, you know, had tons of validation, tons of friends, you know, good relationship and stuff, he'd feel better. But I think the depression is about more than that. Like, I don't doubt that he's genuinely unhappy with his life. I doubt that that's all there is to it. I think that he'd still be depressed because I think he's genuinely depressed. And as in clinically depressed. Yeah, and you know the thing, and guess what? You know what? There's a lot of people out there like that who SSRIs have provided relief from. And this is, you know, every critic of SSRIs says this, and it's not new. They have all these terrible side effects and they don't work. Okay, most people don't get the side effects and they do work. There's tons of people out there who were clinically depressed. They had good lives, but they were depressed. And then taking SSRIs allowed them to enjoy their lives again and be functional. And if you don't understand that, you're just a retard. And which, I mean, puts him in good company because this is not, again, the criticism of SSRIs have been around forever. And they like, some of them are really true, that SSRIs are dangerous and dependent forming, and the cure is often much worse than the disease itself. But they really are a cure for that disease for a lot of people. For most people, probably not. But for a lot of people, my guess is for most people, they're either harmful or they make it worse. But a lot of people, they really do help. And in fact, I'd go even further than that. I would say even for me, right? Like the SSRIs don't cure my depression, but I think I'd have depression even if I never went on them. And that I really do think that the SSRIs make them better. It wasn't worth it. I wouldn't do it again. I would rather, you know, have some more depression and not do it. And, you know, because you could have then focused on other stuff to do it. But anyway, but like what I was saying about the diet and stuff, there's a lot of different things that I can try, like non medical interventions, and I've tried them all. So diet, exercise, and when I diet, I don't just, you know, eat healthy, but I also like get probiotics, sense restraint things that I've talked about, things. There's so many things, right, that I've done to like manage the depression, and they help. They take the edge off the symptoms. They do not cure it, okay? And I think that's where most people are. DBDR himself has gone on like good diets and stuff, and it didn't cure his depression. It doesn't even sound like it really helped that much for him. And so he was saying that, like, look, like the reason this guy talking about me is depressed is because he lives alone, he has no purpose, and he only works part-time, and again, I don't think he didn't say it, but he eats like shit, stuff like that. Like, I've never heard all of this before. No, you fucking retard. Okay, first of all, I am not depressed. And you go back and watch the videos where I was, recovering from the Cymbalta stuff. That's what depression looks like. Okay? You're depressed. I can hear that in every one of your videos. But like me, and I'd be honest with you guys, the thing is, like, and I say this, like, the thing is, like my life is objectively mediocre, and I am dissatisfied with my life, but I'm not. I'm just not depressed. I think, and I think, I don't know if, like, I was about to say you can see that from watching my videos, but no, because I remember DBDR and his viewers are a bunch of retards who probably can't see that. So, but any normies can. But then what he said that really pissed me off was, one of the reasons that, I think I've actually already mentioned it, is that I'm depressed is because I don't have a girlfriend. And this is like, and this is pretty much every Black Pill Orthodox person I've talked to, has had this mindset. Like, when I talk to normie people about being aromantic and that I'm not interested in a relationship, I've never had a normie who didn't get it. Like, every normie has been like, oh, okay, yeah, huh, that is strange, those stuff like that. But like, the Black Pill Orthodox are always like, oh no, you're coping, bro. You're coping, and you really do want a girlfriend, and it's making you depressed that you don't have one. Okay, look, he says he's watched all my videos. I'm positive he's watched my romantic history video. Okay, where I talked about it, and that this has been a lifelong thing with me. Furthermore, I was in a relationship in college, and with, like, a quasi manic pixie dream girl who was perfect for me, and I'm the one who ended it because I hated it. I couldn't stand it. It's just something that, like, and I've been consistent about this for decades now. It's nothing against women, because it would be the same thing if I were gay. The thought of being in a romantic relationship is actively repulsive to me. I genuinely would rather be dead than be in a romantic relationship. I would rather be like an ugly, homeless, troll, like, under a bridge, than be a Chad in a relationship. It's difficult, not these days, but like when I was in high school, at least, I couldn't watch romantic comedies because I felt so bad for the main characters. Like, I wanted them to not be together, not because I was rooting it, like, for their own sake. I just couldn't be happy for them because I couldn't get out of my own shoes and think about how miserable I'd be in a relationship. And no, not everybody, like, I think there's a lot of people who don't feel, I mean, I know most people don't feel that way. Most people, but most people can understand it, except Black Pill Orthodox people, because they really think that, like, they don't even care if it's a bad relationship. They're just like, oh, I don't care, man. Just get me a relationship. I'll take anybody. It's like, well, with that attitude, you're not going to get one anyway. Not to sound all blue pill, but it's like, do you have any idea how repulsive that mindset is to anybody who isn't, you know, a retarded faggot like yourself, you know, especially to women. Like, I mean, that attitude would be a turn off, like, to if you were gay and trying to get a guy, but especially to women. Like, no woman is going to be like interested in a guy who says whose, you know, thing is just like, oh, look, I'll take anything. That's not appealing. And I'm not saying don't be confident. I'm just like, why would anybody want to be with somebody with that attitude? But I'm wasting my breath here. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, how clear I say everything or whatever. It's not going to get through to him. It's not going to get through to any of them. You know, they're just terminally and incurably retarded. But so yeah, and then he's as for living alone, I've always wanted to live alone. I really do need like a lot of alone time, like social interactions. Like, I'm not antisocial, but like the socialization that I get at work, so that's like 25 hours a week. It's good for me. I like it. I need it, but it's also draining. And like when it's done, I need my alone time to recruit. I've always needed a lot of alone time. And then, you said like, you know, that I don't have any friends. No, I have friends. I don't see them very often. I would go and see my friends like once or twice a year at this point. Used to be more than that. Same type of thing. I mean, I talk to them, you know, I talk to them via text and stuff, but I don't, you know, I don't spend a lot of time with them because I just don't like doing it. You know, I like to be by myself. I think it's good to, and maybe I should do it a little bit more than I do, but like the one friend that I see lives like 45 minutes away. You know, it's a pain in the ass. So I really would only go for like special occasions, like to watch the Super Bowl or something. And the thing is, like, I don't like, you know, just hanging out for its own sake. Like, you know, like if I'm going to spend time with my friends, it has to be like to watch something, you know, to watch something on TV or something, you know, like whatever. I'm not really interested in like hanging out and talking. But also like I have family members who come over and like stay with me sometimes. And then sometimes I stay with them. And when it's over is like the biggest feeling of relief you can imagine. You know, like I can't stand the chaos in the house. Like, you know, people running around making noise. You know, like, again, I really need alone time. I really need quiet. So that's, you know, not what it is. But the thing is, I'm just not depressed. You know, and again, I'd admit it if I was. Now, like, there's a lot of things about my life I could change. I am dissatisfied with my life. I wish the fatigue wasn't there. I wish I could work full time. You know, if the fatigue was gone, there's a lot of things that I'd be interested in doing that I can't. You know, like, because I can't do anything physical. Like, I've got a real interest in skateboarding, tennis, basketball, but I can't do that stuff because my fatigue's so bad. I'd love to go back to lifting weights. Can't do it. I'm too tired. You know, and then, you know, I have just a low motivation, so I can't do things I should do, like learn Spanish, you know, stuff like that. You know, there's definitely opportunities I've had to make things better for myself that I haven't done either because, you know, low energy or low motivation or just, you know, my inability to hold a sleep schedule. But you know, I'm also dissatisfied because what I talked about is just boredom, like the regularness of life. You know, when you're young, you know, you can, well, I don't know, because when you're young, you don't really get things. Things just seem more meaningful but you know, as you get older, everything is just more of the same. And this is a problem that's gone back for thousands of years. I mean, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Ecclesiastes, King Solomon talks about it. That is just that you get to a point where and that's a guy who had, you know, the Chad life. You know, he was Chad, he was high status, he had multiple wives and, you know, virtually unlimited concubines. And it gets to a point where everything is just more of the same. And then it all just ends with death anyway, you know, and it just now, like, and when you're young, you either don't realize that or don't appreciate its significance. Like, you know, when I was young and all like the trivial bullshit that it had meaning to me, I think even then I knew that it objectively didn't mean anything, but I was able to just kind of like put it out of my mind and just say like, well, it didn't really matter. Because when you're young, you kind of like live in the present in a way that you can't, like, because being, for me at least, getting older, you start to step back and sort of see the big picture, which makes a lot of things less appealing, or at least less meaningful. So yeah, I mean that's all true, and the but the thing is, like, what he's saying though, like I do think that a lot of our mental health problems in our society are from diet. I don't think that's as much as close, but I do think if everybody was on a good diet, like the world's mental health would improve a lot. But he also mentions being on their phones and stuff, being online. And yeah, I think that's a real problem. And, you know, studies have shown that like our attention spans in the last 20 years have declined by about 20 seconds or something like that. And our attention spans then were reduced from where they were, you know, earlier than that, you know, and then, you know, before TV and stuff, or before cable TV and the remote. Because remember, when TV came out, there was no cable, there was no remote. You just had like, you know, a few channels, and if you wanted to change it, you had to get up from your seat and move it. So that reduced people's attention spans. And then just even having TV reduced people's attention spans from when there was only radios. And then even having radios reduced people's attention span from when there was nothing. And if you see ads from like the 1900s, like the amount of text on them is like, it's like reading an entire article. Because people had the attention span back then. Hell, there were riots of people trying to get, you know, the latest edition of the novel Great Expectations. Not edition, but Great Expectations was published like one section at a time. You know, because people had the patience, the attention span to do that stuff. And people certainly weren't any smarter back then. Their IQs were probably lower. Think about something like the Lincoln-Douglas debates, which could never happen today. The debates we have now completely lack substance. And it's all because of the lack of attention span. And I really think, and this is the thing that I wanted to talk about most, that not everything, but a huge part of our mental health crisis is the reduced attention span. You know, it sounds so simple, but it's true. Because, you know, I've tried a lot of different things. Meditation, different sense restraint, what do you call the shamanic drumming, and but you know, one thing that I'm doing now is reading fiction, and that would be like one of my recommendations to DBDR is dump the video games and read fiction instead, because it very rapidly improved my mental health, you know, because I was dealing with like a lot of anxiety and stuff, and it's really reduced my boredom, you know, just by, and last night I was able to sit down and watch a full 2-hour movie, which, you know, for me is incredible. Like, you know, I haven't done that I don't even remember the last time I did that, because just a few days of reading has improved my attention span that much. And the better my attention span is, the less the boredom bothers me. And there are some studies to indicate it, but I would definitely give that a shot and recommend it to everybody. Hopefully this video isn't too long for me to upload. That's all for now. See you in the next.